Alright, so this is the second video of lesson 1-6, which is over two-dimensional figures. In this video, we're going to talk about area and circumference and perimeter, as you can tell on the screen right now. So the perimeter of a polygon is the sum of the lengths of the sides of the polygon. Some shapes have special formulas for perimeter, but all are derived from the basic definition of perimeter. You will derive these formulas in chapter 11, which we're actually throwing in pieces of chapter 11 in other places, including today's lesson. The circumference of a circle is the distance around the circle. So the area of a figure is the number of square units needed to cover a surface. So here are several formulas for perimeter and area. Of three common polygons and then a circle. So you have a triangle, which to find the perimeter you just have to add up all three sides. To find the area you're going to do 1/2 base times height. For a square, the square is just the sum of the four sides, which are all the same, so you can use 4s, which an area is s squared. If you want to, you can kind of forget about your area for squares and you can just use the rectangle formula for squares because squares are a type of rectangle. And the rectangle formula for perimeter is just adding up all four sides, and your area formula is length times width. For circles, circumference is basically the perimeter of a circle. And if you are given the radius, then your circumference can be found by doing 2 pi r. And if you're given the diameter, you can find it by find circumference by setting it equal to pi times your diameter. Because your radius is halfway across the circle and your diameter is all the way across the circle. And then area formula is pi r squared. So this is in your book and you are going to want to familiarize yourself with it, but we will be giving you these formulas on the test. So find the area and perimeter / circumference of each. So I skipped the actual example because I thought that the guided practice went over more things, so it was easier to do it that way. So I do believe I started with the perimeter, which is the sum of the sides. So in this case, our perimeter would be 6 plus 5.5 plus 6 plus 5.5. So our perimeter is 23 feet. For area, our area is length times width. So area would be 6 times 5.5 in this case, which is 33 feet squared. Okay. In part B will actually be finding the circumference because it's a circle. Our circumference, in this case, we're going to want to use pi times diameter because they gave us the diameter. But if they'd given us the radius, then we would want to use that formula, or 2 pi r instead. So circumference equals pi times 6.2. So my circumference equals 19.3. And as far as these problems go, I want you to use the pi button on your calculators, not 3.14 for accuracy purposes. And that should get you closer to your answer. As far as area goes, for area you can use pi r squared, which means that you're going to have to find the radius from the diameter that it's given. Radius is half of your diameter, so our radius in this problem is 3.1. So our area formula is pi times 3.1 squared, which is area times pi times 6, or area equals pi times 9.61. So area equals 30.2 centimeters squared. Your units for area should always be square units, and your units for perimeter and circumference should always be just the units. So 2C is a triangle. So in order to find the perimeter, we're just going to find the sum of the sides. So in this case, it's 9.5 plus 9.5 plus 10.2. And our perimeter then is 29.2. Our area formula for triangles is 1/2 base times height. So in this case, our base is going to be 10.2 because we want to use the two sides that are with this right angle. So since they said that this right angle here, that means that this is going to be our height and this is going to be our base. Otherwise, if they had given us this side here and there was a right angle here, we would want to use this as our base and this is our height. But don't make this harder than it has to be. Use 10.2 and 8. So our area is 1/2 times 10.2 times 8, which is 1/2 times 81.6, which is 40.8 inches squared. So example 4 is where things get a little bit more complicated, only because they give you coordinates and they expect you to use those coordinates to find your areas. So first off, I took these coordinates and I plotted them on the coordinate grid so that I could see what I needed to do and what I didn't need to do. Now, in some cases, you're going to have to use distance formula because they don't tell you how far it is from one point to another. In this case, we do have one side that we don't have to use distance formula, we can just count. So to find PR, we can actually just count from P to R, which I do believe I did here. So that is actually also going to be our base of our triangle, and so that equals 7. Our height is going to be from P down to our base. So we're just going to use what we know to find that height. So that should be this distance here, which is 4. So our area is going to be found by doing 1/2 base times height. So area is 1/2 times 7 times 4, which is 14 units squared. And I'm going to get rid of this box so that I can actually see here in a couple minutes. So, however, to find perimeter, we have to use PR, QR, and QP. So I have to use distance formula to find both P, Q, and PR. So in order to do that, I'm going to find the distance from P to R first. So this is going to be 4 minus -1. I'm pulling these numbers from here and here. So I have 4 minus -1 squared plus -1 minus 3 squared, which gives me, so 4 minus -1 becomes 5. So this is 5 squared plus -1 minus 3 is -4. So that's -4 squared. So the distance between P and R equals the square root of 25 plus 16, which is the square root of 41, which is approximately 6.4. So that's finding the distance from P to R. I also need to find the distance from P to Q. So in that case, I'm finding the distance from P to Q. So I have -1 minus -3 squared plus 3 minus -1 squared. So that becomes our -1 minus -3 is 2 squared, because this minus negative is going to become a positive. And 3 minus -1 is 4. So that becomes 4 squared, which gives me the square root of 4 plus 16, which is the square root of 20, which is approximately 4.5. Just want to get rid of this. So once I have this distance here, this distance here, and this distance here, I can just plug that information into our perimeter formula. So the perimeter equals the distance from Q to R plus the distance from P to R plus the difference from P to Q. So that's 7 plus 6.4 plus 4.5, which is approximately 7.9 units. Now on these I use units and units squared because they didn't tell me what my unit was. So I just labeled it with units and units squared. Okay, so here is the guided practice for this problem. I suggest that you pause the video and try this on your own and then come back to it. Okay, so I hope you've tried it on your own. On this problem, nicely enough, this actually, since it's a right angle, we have less distance formulas that we have to do. But we're again going to do area first because that's easier than perimeter because you don't have to do the distance formula at all on this one for area. So first I need to find the distance between A and B, which is not my base. That actually should be my height. And this distance is my base. Sorry about that. So from A to B is 5, and from B to C is 7. So my area formula is 1/2 times base times height. So I plug that information in, and I get 1/2 times 5 times 7, which is 17.5. And although I had those messed up in the beginning, it doesn't actually make any difference because multiplication, you can multiply in any order. Okay, so to find perimeter, I do have to do the distance formula once, which I think is over here. So I find the distance between A and C. So that is the square root of -1 minus 6 squared plus 4 minus -1 squared. So the distance from A to C becomes -1 minus 6 is -7 squared plus 4 minus -1 is 5 squared. And one common mistake that I've seen a lot of you guys do is a negative times a negative gives you a positive. So -7 squared is 49, not -49. So 49 plus 25 is 72. So the square root of 72 is approximately 8.6. So then to find perimeter, I just add up from A to B plus from B to C plus from A to C. And my perimeter is 5 plus 7 plus 8.6, which is 20.6 units.